It took over a year and I was genuinely devastated. Like, it was hella depressing. Like, you got to understand, I basically learned my whole paradigm to understand reality.
You believe this for 9 years? You believe
Yeah. Like, literally, yeah.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. In this video, we're going to be looking at an Englishman, at least I believe he's English, who about 9 years ago became a radical Muslim, who studied the Quran, took his faith seriously, changed the way he dressed, changed the language he would speak, going from English to Arabic, changed his whole life and his whole paradigm, his whole worldview to become Islamic. But our story doesn't end there, because after engaging with his faith critically, after seeing how other Muslims behave and seeing the issues within Muslim communities, this man decided to leave Islam and become an ex-Muslim. And immediately I have respect for this man, because anyone who does that is technically under a death sentence from a Sunni Islamic perspective, since the Prophet of Islam declared that anyone who leaves his religion, kill him. Now, who is this man? Well, his Arabic name, or at least his Islamic name, is Bilal. But now he just goes by the name Billy. And it turns out, if I had gone to Speaker's Corner maybe just a few years earlier, I probably would have had the chance to meet him. Of course, I would have been debating him and doing everything within my power to try to show this man how Islam is wrong. But thanks be to God, he did it himself. But let's take a look at who this man was while he was a passionate, devout Muslim. Let's take a look at some clips.
You're going like this to my face.
Because you're telling me you're going to dominate me and conquer the world.
Get your finger out my face, bro. Get your finger out my face.
What do you mean when you say that Muslims are going to dominate the world? I'm not going to be your dhimmi. I'm not going to be your dhimmi.
What does that mean, bro?
And you will give us the jizya.
Because I'm not getting... See, there we go. There's the extreme. There's the extreme. He says
we're going to take our coins. You don't belong there.
Stop running away from the
take
subject.
it. That's it.
You literally said you're going to dominate the world.
Yeah, we will. And what? What are you going to do?
Mate, your empires have collapsed. The caliphates are nowhere to be seen. You come here and you say you're going to dominate the world, and we're all going to pay you a jizya. I'm not paying you nothing, mate.
You will.
We'll see if I pay you a jizya.
And then must you say thank you to the British government?
Would you be offended?
Hold it down, my
Why would you be offended about someone's mum?
my boy.
Why talking about someone's mum, bro? What are you going to do?
You never talk about his mom, not about his mom, though.
Maybe you condemn someone.
Wallahi, this is all fucked up. What's this one?
We ain't going nowhere. We ain't going nowhere.
Wallahi, let me say something.
We ain't going nowhere. Cause it's bad for life.
Straight from the
Now, I didn't want to show those clips to embarrass the man. By all means, no, that's not what I'm doing. I want to show those clips because I want to contrast who this man used to be with who this man is now. Now, I don't know this man too well. I only met him a few days ago when I went down to Speaker's Corner and had the privilege of talking to him. But I thought his story was so fascinating that I wanted to share it with you guys. And you can make up your own mind whether you see any big changes between who he used to be as a Muslim and now who he is as an ex-Muslim. Let's watch the video.
There's lots of different religious viewpoints that come here, but there's only one viewpoint that behaves like that. And now that I look at things objectively and don't subscribe to anything, I can see that and be more honest about it and say, yeah, there's some serious hypocrisy here. There's some serious stuff going on.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
What made you go to Islam in the first place?
Oh, sorry.
How did it brainwash you to come into Islam?
Lots of things.
So how did they brainwash you to come into Islam?
How they convince you to accept Islam?
Yeah, that's the. Don't say brainwash. Just say how did you get into Islam? That's the question.
That's a very long story. So when I was a teenager, I had actually read the Bible in its entirety. I read a translation of the Quran in its entirety. I actually went and spoke to Muslims about belief, and what the answers I got, they do sound very enticing. They sound very good. They sound very polished. And now I say that polished, very revised, very scripted, very always the same thing. And unfortunately, when you don't actually understand like I do now, things to do with different theologies, the history of them, geopolitical history. When you hear the arguments without understanding those things, they sound great. And I was saying to, what's that guy called? I think, is it Chris? Earlier, the Christian guy, Chris.
That would be me, I believe.
I said, I've actually got this sort of saying I'd say now, which is Islam is like a meat pie. You eat it, it's great, but you don't want to know what goes into it. Because once you learn sort of all the theologies that were around at Muhammad's time, in his time and place, and then you realize every narrative the Quran gives, every practice, every statement about the universe, there's not one thing that's actually unique. So that's how I left. But that process of leaving the religion as a whole, that took about a year of learning, just out of curiosity, because I've always been interested in history, politics, geopolitics, sociology, psychology, and as you learn sort of more of those things, I just couldn't take it seriously, because the Quran sounds all amazing and mystical. Then when you read, even when you read a translation of it, there's certain statements it makes about things to do with the universe or whatever. They sound very, you sort of read over them, but if you actually take the time to actually look into each statement it makes about the physical world, things like shooting stars are thrown by Allah at the devils trying to steal information from heaven and the earth. Isn't it weird that that was in Zoroastrian theology?
Yes.
And that Zoroastrians were around in Arabia at Muhammad's place and time. Isn't it weird that every astrological thing the Quran says, everything it says about the structure of the earth, happens to be found in Zoroastrianism?
Right.
And then I also found, yeah, and Aristotle. And then also I found even, you know, the sort of the Islamic narrative of Christ, Isa ibn Maryam. Isn't it also funny that all the stories attributed to Christ happened to be in the Arabian Christianity that was around in Muhammad's time? And isn't it also strange that they worked on the oasis points on the trade route, and Muhammad was a trader for the best part of 30 years. So every day of his working life, he was surrounded by religious poetry of certain stories, and then when his revelation comes along, it's an amalgamation of everything he saw and heard. It's a bit strange, that, isn't it?
Can I ask though, what was the straw that broke the camel's back, in which you were like,
Yeah. So the straw that...
Frank, I'm coming for you, don't
The straw, there wasn't like a specific thing. Like, as I said, it happened over like a year-long period of learning about more and more different things. And it wasn't like I just woke up one day and went, oh, it's all bullshit. Because that doesn't happen, because you're immersed in it, right? When you believe in Islam, you have to indulge in circular reasoning. You have to ignore evidence around you to come back to your paradigm to view things. But when you look at things objectively, you realize, and it was devastating. Like, I was genuinely upset about it. Like, because it is a devastating thing, because your whole world as you know it, you effectively realize is bullshit. But it wasn't like there was one thing that made it implode. The best way I can describe it is like a Jenga tower. You learn more, a bit comes out. You learn another theology and a part of history, a bit more comes out. You learn a bit more about geopolitics and trade, a bit more comes out. You learn a bit more about psychology and how humans have behaved and evolved over the many millennia. Another piece comes out, and then eventually it comes to a point where I'm trying to defend the deen of Islam. I'm actually trying to defend it with the Dawah arguments you hear here. And then I realized these are scientifically a load of nonsense. Historically, they're a load of nonsense.
So Bilal, or Billy as he's now known as, he looked at Islam objectively. He studied the history of Arabia at the time of Muhammad, and he realized that a lot of the stories and the theology and even the science that is found in the Quran was already available and being widespread in that area before Muhammad came on the scene. And it's because of this that he started to really question what he believed and why he believed it. Many people at Speaker's Corner, both a few days ago and I think the week prior, got a chance to ask him what the reaction was by other Muslims to him once he had actually left Islam and word had got out that he was no longer a Muslim. Let's watch.
What was the reaction of your peers when you left Islam?
I've had a few threats. Yeah, even here in this park.
you've had threats?
Yeah, in this park, like in December was when I was last here. There was a discussion about politics, nothing to do with religion, and someone recognized me and asked, are you still a Muslim? Are you still a Muslim? And I said, why do you care? And he got more aggressive and more insistent. I said, no, I think it's a load of nonsensical plagiarized shite. And then it went to, oh yeah, watch when you get outside, there's going to be consequences for what you say.
like the religion of peace, right?
And that's when I said, oh yes, very peaceful, very civilized. If you can't deal with people speaking, don't come to Speaker's Corner. And then he just continued swearing and stormed off, and that was it.
And again, I just want to emphasize, it's incredibly brave of this young man to leave Islam, knowing full well, having studied it himself quite passionately, that he could be potentially putting himself under a real threat of harm. And by that, I mean execution, if an Islamic government ever got into power, precisely because he now has a target above his head as an ex-Muslim who is publicly known. And not only that, but he's the worst kind of ex-Muslim. He's an ex-Muslim who's critiquing Islam. Apostate prophet, eat your heart out. Here's Billy. But what surprises me most after having the pleasure of having a quick chat with Billy when I last went to Speaker's Corner is the fact that he's incredibly well spoken. He seems genuinely happy and healthy. And contrast that with the clips I showed at the beginning of the video, which I got from just other channels, some of them even Dawa channels, that were recording how he used to be, and you see a totally different man. You see a man who was more aggressive, and I think just uncomfortable with where he was and what he was trying to defend. But now, the Billy we see today, there's something encouraging about him. He seems happier, more at peace. There's a part of these videos where Billy talks about how he tries to rationalize, as Bilal, as the Muslim, his kind of absolute disdain for certain people, but he realized it didn't quite make sense for him to have this feeling, but he had to have it because as a Muslim, he felt compelled to hold these strong feelings. And he talks about it in contrast to Hatun Tash being the sort of like 5'4" Christian evangelist who has a very aggressive approach in trying to reach Muslims to explain why Islam is false and Christ is the only way. She was the victim of a horrifying stab attack just a few years prior, also at Speaker's Corner. But I find what he says about that interesting, and how he has to see her as the enemy, even though she's just a small Turkish woman who has no power over him whatsoever. Let's watch.
You built into the circular reasoning,
sometimes
didn't you?
just life experiences.
Yeah.
Like I explained the thing about Hatun. It's not just that. It's other things. It's like, yeah. So how I look at it, it's like, you know, like with the Hatun issue when she got stabbed.
Yeah.
I was thinking, even then I was a practicing Muslim, and I was thinking, I think what she says is a load of shit. I think what she believes is a load of shit.
Yeah.
I still do.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, but how can, and I've come across her physically, she comes up to about my chest before, and I'm thinking, how can a fully grown man try and murder someone for hurty words?
Yeah,
and that's what I said. That's the point where I started to go, I know that I've come across that woman in real life. Like even though I despise her at the time, I couldn't stand her, didn't like what she said. I couldn't compute a fully grown adult male needing to try and kill someone, a tiny woman like
it's
that.
just happened in South Africa.
This is part
And
of your
it's not
culture
just
as well,
that
brother.
specifically, it happens all the time. It's like when you hear a report about, you know, abroad, they strapped a bomb to a child, and I just think,
absolutely.
well, it's like, you know, there was that Afghan lady that got arrested because she got caught trying to take her kids to Afghanistan to do a suicide. Did you not see that?
No.
She complained because they put up her mugshot without her niqab, and they had to release another one for Facebook. No, show your face. These dangerous morons should not have access to children. It's the same as Ali Dawah saying, I have no problem with my daughter getting married at 9. Tell fucking social services. Don't let him near children. Don't let this guy in the mosque. It's paedophilia. It's nonsense.
But it goes back to the whole circular reasoning of, you know,
Exactly.
This,
It's because, you know,
and
it's
they're trying to question our own thinking. They're making us question what we hold, you know, have a value in.
And
I think that's just wrong.
On the topic of paedophilia, you know the guy, he come here, he's an Iranian, I think he turned Sunni, Daniel Hakikachu.
Oh, he's the American guy.
Yeah, he had a debate with someone about,
He's getting a lot of bad press
about the paedophilia.
Yeah.
And he was saying in Islam, it's puberty that makes it okay. And a
that's
guy
okay,
said to him, do you know what precocious puberty is? He said, there are studies, it can happen in an 11-month-old baby.
No, there's
So if that's your definition for making sex okay, do you think it's okay for someone who's, say, 40, 50, 60 to have physical intercourse with an 11-month-old baby?
And then they say
if
atheists.
that's the gateway to say it's okay.
Even an atheist would know that that's wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, because it was born in a place and time we didn't
Yeah,
understand
this
the
is the
physical
culture.
body, we
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
understand
Culture.
psychological trauma. The same way
same way I said about stars, you know, people make up nonsense. They were rational explanations then because they didn't fucking know. That's it. And it's
What I like about Billy is he went the whole 9 yards. I think that's the expression. 9 yards? 10 yards? He went the whole way. He didn't just put one toe into the water and say, okay, if anyone asks, I'm going to tell them I'm a Muslim. I'm going to say assalamu alaikum when I meet them, give up pork maybe, and that's it, we'll call it a day. He went, no, I'm going to study the Quran. I'm going to try and find out the true understanding of it. I'm going to put it into practice as best as I can. And what kind of an influence did that have? And I think overall it was a negative influence in his life, which is why it's so amazing that through his own convictions and his own search for truth, he managed to still look at things objectively enough to say, okay, there are things in the Quran that are just not right. Dhul Qarnayn cannot be a Muslim. Dhul Qarnayn is Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was a pagan. He was not a Muslim. You know, shooting stars at demons, mountains are pegs that keep the earth from shaking due to earthquakes. He looked at all of this and he managed to pull himself out of Islam, which is something that I don't think everyone could have done. I think it would have been a lot easier for the average person who went that far to just stay in it, keep their mouths shut, and just never admit that you lost belief. There are a group of people who often it's actually because they're raised in a religious environment, or it's because they became religious and then left, and because of what they experienced, you can call it a form of abuse, and you can say they religiously abused. And that's a real category of people who really suffered, usually at the hands of others who they trusted at some point, but then realized later on in life that they had been taken advantage of. And now, because that's their only frame of reference, they don't have confidence to consider other worldviews and other paradigms, other beliefs, because, well, once burned, twice shy. And that makes complete sense. And I think if I was in that position, I would feel the same way. But if if Billy had the strength while he was a Muslim to critique Islam internally, and that he had the strength to pull himself by his own bootstraps out of it, then I hope one day, Billy, maybe not today or tomorrow, maybe not next week, but some point in your life, I pray and I hope that you consider Christianity. And even if you don't, Billy, I don't have to hate you. In fact, I love you anyway, because my religion teaches me to do that, so I don't really get a choice in the matter. I'm not gonna shun you. I'm not gonna speak poorly behind your back. Part of the Christian faith is to be understanding of others in their rejection of it. Christ didn't go around armed with a sword going after people because they didn't follow him. He let them walk away. He showed them miracles and they saw, and some said, it's not for me. And he let them go their way, because that's what someone who loves you does. They give you that kind of freedom, the freedom to say no. Another side effect of Billy leaving Islam is that he can now actually have meaningful conversations with people. One of the things he was quite focused on when we spoke to him is the fact that he feels he can actually chat with people that he simply couldn't have before, either because it would have been frowned upon by his friends and Muslim brothers and sisters in faith, and also partly because, well, Islam kind of tells him he has to hate this person in a way. He can't see eye to eye to them, and there can't be peace among them. They're constantly in a state of war. It's just a degree of what kind of level are you at. Well, now he can talk to those people. If Billy wanted to have a conversation with Hatem Tash, he actually could. There wouldn't be anything stopping him. If Billy wanted to have a conversation with Bob of Speaker's Corner, like he has done, he can do. And there is nothing stopping him.
I mentioned this to Bob off camera when I spoke to him. I said it is good that as a person he's genuine in taking like responsibility and talking about issues which religious communities tend not to do. So I was talking in the case of like crime or paedophilia, right? When it happened, like we saw the Church of England's reaction to the recent scandal, it was appalling. It was like they didn't really care. But I was like, I did see online, Bob went out of his way to address the issue and talk about it. So I was like, oh, that's good, that there's someone talking about these issues. But then when I was a Muslim, I sort of noticed that Muslim communities I'm not speaking about all Muslims, but generally in the UK, the Muslim community is very hesitant to talk about community issues. There is more of an attitude of sweep it under the carpet.
I agree with it.
I don't think that's necessarily even a religious issue. I think that's a cultural thing. Like, because there's a lot of thing about shame and, image in the community and things like that makes them sweep under the carpet. I don't think it's necessarily always religious, but there is a problem in differences in how people deal with things and take accountability. I have noticed that.
We're starting to see more and more people, even people from the UK, who had become Muslim but have now left it and rejected it. And they rejected it because of a plethora of reasons. And although the Dawah guys don't really like this, the world is starting to notice, particularly people in the UK, and there's more and more ex-Muslims that it's starting to become undeniable, and people are realizing actually there's a real community of people that do need help. Remember, these people have put their life on the line in a sense, because if Islam ever comes to power, then there's a real case to be put forward from Sunni Orthodox theology. Not a crazy form of Islam, but the actual very base traditional understanding, the conservative view that those people should be killed. And it's done legally through the courts. These people need our support, whether we're Christians, we're Jews, we're agnostics, whoever it might be. These people have put their necks out on the line, in a sense quite literally, so that others can have the freedom to speak their mind and to come to their own conclusions. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found this video interesting. I certainly did when recording this and putting this together. I hope you join me in wishing Billy the best of luck wherever he goes, but obviously we kind of hope he becomes a Christian, and we'll be keeping you in our prayers, Billy. If you have any questions about the Christian faith, you can email me at chris@speakerscorner. My email is in the box down below. And other than that, I'd just like to say, God bless you, Billy, and God bless you at home for watching. Have a great day and take care.